Welcome, ladies and gents. Chris Andre here. Let's talk boxing. I'm going to discuss 3 fights. We'll get technical. We'll get deep. We're going to discuss Saul Alvarez and his dominant and, let's be honest, easy victory over Jermell Charlo. I also want to talk about Otto and him overcoming Murat Gassiev, and also the braggadocious and brutal Jai Opetaia. What a performance that was against Jordan Thompson, and what a cruiserweight he is. Let's start off discussing the big one though, Canelo Alvarez. There are a couple of aspects at play here. First, there's the psychological aspect, and we have to talk about that because I'm sorry to say, guys, Jermell Charlo did not look like he came to win this fight. Then there is also the technical aspect. We'll talk about how Canelo Alvarez shut him down from a technical perspective. First, I want to discuss the psychological. And in the build-up to this fight, a lot of people were saying to me, Jermell Charlo shook. Base the Kid, shout out to Base, go check out his channel. He was saying to me, Chris, I'm telling you, he's nervous. And a bunch of people were saying it to me. This guy smack talks, he trash talks. He's this larger than life character. All of a sudden he's getting in the ring with Canelo. He's gotten what he's been calling for. And now he's shook. Now he's quiet as a church mouse. And I was saying, don't be silly. This guy is an undisputed champion. He's been there, done it a million times. When you train every day and you fight every day, fighting doesn't intimidate you really when you're an elite level fighter. Even if you're up against another elite level fighter, you might be nervous about the event. But he's not shook. He's not nervous. Relax. What he's doing, in my opinion, is turning up using an Andy Ruiz type of approach. I'm going to be nice. I'm going to be respectful. I trash talk my way to get the fight. I've got that secured. On fight night, I'm going to release all that bottled up aggression. And that's how I interpreted his actions. Well, post-fight, Base the Kid messaged me and he said, now do you see why I was saying he was so nervous? Because he looked so gun shy. He looked risk averse. Jermell Charlo did not come out there and say, you know what, I'm going out on my shield. In fact, I know boxing is different from war, even though we use the term a lot in boxing. But you have to understand the psychology of war. After last night's display, I have to question where Jermell Charlo is mentally and emotionally at the moment. Is there part of him that has jacked it in? After all, remember, this is a guy that has always been ultra aggressive, moody, fiery. A man that always had a lot of dog in him. He's a guy that refers to himself as a warrior, as a lion. He once came down to the ring wearing a lion's outfit with a lion's helmet. You often hear fighters say, I'm willing to die in the ring in order to achieve my dreams. And Jermell Charlo had that sort of aura about him. But last night, he didn't display any of that. So have we seen a change? Have we seen something where he's made a lot of money, he's become undisputed, and now when there was so much on the line, it wasn't quite a big enough dream for him to want to risk it all? I mean, imagine he was to have beaten Canelo Alvarez last night. Undisputed light middleweight champion, undisputed super middleweight champion. You can then go for a middleweight title and really look to make history and become one of the all-time greats. Or he could have made a massive fight against Terence Crawford. And yet he wasn't willing to lay it all on the line. And I want you to consider some of the quotes from great warriors and militarists of the past, these conquerors, so you can understand what it takes to overcome in battle. Alexander the Great, the king of Macedon, Greece. And the reason I'm bringing him up first and foremost is because he, like Jermell Charlo, referred to himself as a lion and wore a lion's helmet. He was once saying, when it came to war, that toil and risk are the price of glory. But it is a lovely thing to live with courage and die, leaving an everlasting fame. In other words, if you're willing to go out there, leave it all on the line, go to war with Canelo, let your hands go. Even if you fall short and he stops you, people will remember that war. People still talk about Hagler Hearns, because Hearns came out to meet Hagler. There was a war. He stood his ground. The fact that he fell on his shield didn't mean that people undermined him. People were in awe of the war. Charlo wasn't willing to do that last night. And it wasn't just the Macedonians out of the Greek city kingdoms that had this sort of mentality. You had the Spartan proverb, feel no fear before the multitude of men. Do not run in panic, but let each man bear his shield straight towards the four fighters, regarding his own life as hateful and holding the dark spirits of death as dear as the radiance of the sun. And it's not just Greek history that has this viewpoint. Sun Tzu, the great militarist and strategist, he said victory is reserved for those warriors who are willing to pay its price. Miyamoto Musashi, a samurai, once said, to win any battle, you must fight as if you are already dead. Did at any point last night you look at Jermell Charlo and think he had that sort of mindset? And I understand people say, but Chris, he's never quite fought an elite guy like Canelo Alvarez. Okay, but he's had moments of crises in the past in his boxing career, and he bit down on that gun shield and he was willing to show that dog. He didn't do it last night. And at points I felt that maybe I've just got the tactics wrong. Maybe he's not going to try and build up a big lead. Maybe what he's trying to do is hang in there, minimal punishment early on, and then approach it like Golovkin approached a third fight. Now, Golovkin, of course, was 40 years old, and I don't think he felt he could go 12 rounds toe-to-toe with Canelo anymore, so he decided to go down this route. Maybe Charlo went down this route thinking, I'm the smaller man, this is what I want to do to approach it to try and win the fight, stay fresh until the last third of the fight, then I'll really start to let my hands go. And that's what Golovkin did, and he won 2 or 3 rounds in those last 4 against Canelo. Maybe Charlo looked at that and he thought, you know what? Maybe I can get Canelo out of there late on. That's going to be my tactic. He gasses a little bit. We'll do that. Even that never came. So he wasn't that active early on. He was dealt with pretty much. He was hurt and went into survival mode in the middle rounds. And then towards the end of the fight, he didn't really take big risks either. It was very passive as a performance. Now, from a technical perspective, Canelo Alvarez was able to shut him down. We spoke in the preview about one of the things he's very, very good at is punching off of a level change Jermell Charlo when he's in the defensive position. So you're going after him and you're throwing a flurry of punches potentially, and he'll duck down in order to protect himself. But he ducks in a way where he's actually coiled. And from there, he can come up with quite a surprising uppercut or left hook. And he was able to land a couple of those on Canelo. But by and large, what Saul Alvarez was able to do is be very understanding of that and preempt the potential of an attack and nullify it. If he was right up close Canelo and he was close enough to be able to reach him by putting his hands out, when he would duck down, he would literally use head control or control him by putting his hands on his shoulders or his forearm across his face to stop him from being able to rise up again. So he'd control him from there. If he would bend forward, he'd just rip an uppercut. And so he's either punching him to stop him coming back or controlling him. Alternatively, if he was sort of at more mid-range, he would land his own punch, expect that sort of shot to come after Charlo had dipped, and he'd literally just pull back and a shot would whiz by. If he didn't have time to pull back, he'd literally throw his right hand up and it would catch him on the forearms. It was as though he could read everything that Jermell Charlo was doing. He was just in complete control. It was a performance whereby he was dominant, but there were moments in there where you're looking at it and you're thinking, Canelo's telegraphing a little bit of this. There are times which he does this quite a lot actually. He'll get you back up onto the ropes and he'll keep his lead hand in your face, right? And he starts to cock up that right hand. He takes his little shovel steps forward to line you up with that right hand, and you know that right hand's coming. And the way Charlo was able to deal with that early on is actually to literally put up a high guard and lean back. And as that right hand would come, because there's a slight loop on it, and he'd lean back, he'd catch it on the shoulder stroke bicep, and he wouldn't be getting caught flush with it. And Bivol used a similar approach early in the Canelo fight, and he had success with it. So I'm sure they studied that, and they had success with it, like I said. But the difference is with Bivol, when Canelo would stop going, Bivol's then going to go after him. So you can implement those defensive elements, but you have to show a willingness to be offensive, right? There wasn't much of that at all from Jermell Charlo, particularly those long, fast, straight punches. He had to let his hands go, and we just didn't see that happening. In the preview, we also spoke about the fact that sometimes he likes to dip his head slightly to the side, and as he's boxing and moving, when he slips off to the side, his head will come slightly off the centre line, but he stays quite kind of tall. So that's slightly off the centre line, and it might be away from the Canelo left hook. It can be directly in line with the right hand. So whilst that high guard would protect from a looping right hand, the straight right hand, or to lean forward as Canelo sometimes does and throw an over the top right hand, that was the shot that was on for Canelo that could cause serious damage, I felt. And the knockdown occurred. It was an uppercut before Jermell took the knee, but the reason it was an uppercut is because he dipped down forward after being hurt from a straight right hand. So the sort of punch that was available to Canelo that could get to Charlo did indeed land. But what he had quite a lot of success with were individual left hooks to the body, and he also started to find a little bit of a hole around the guard. But they were individual pot shots. They were ones and twos, and although they're very powerful, you have to go off of that. And where he did have some success is that when Canelo was loading up with the right hand, that left hook sometimes would fire back as a flash fast left hook in return. But then you've got to let go of your hands and then pivot out. Let go of flurries. You're not going to match him individual punch for punch. You have to outwork Canelo. He's bigger than you. He's physically stronger than you. He's more creative. He's smarter. He's more accurate with his punches. They're powerful punches. He's creative with the way he sets his shots up. You're not going to be able to deal with him like that. You have to outwork him and use your athleticism. None of that came. Canelo was in control. Easy night's work. I felt really he should have got the stoppage. Really. He never really looked like getting the stoppage. Apart from when he dropped him, even then, he didn't really kick on. And so that's why for me, it's only really a sort of a B grade performance from Canelo Alvarez. It wasn't a wow performance. This wasn't a Danny Jacobs level performance. He didn't perform as well as he did against Gennady Golovkin in the second fight, a fight that I actually felt he lost. but he still showed some really good stuff in there. That wasn't that Canelo. This Canelo, although he said himself, nobody beats this Canelo, I don't think that performance was exceptional. It was just easy for him because although he was brilliant in certain areas and shutting down Jermell, there wasn't much coming back. And in terms of Canelo feeling he could deal with anybody, this version of Canelo, look, a guy like Benavidez will let his hands go. And if he can absorb the punishment, just like Jermell was able to do for large parts, and he's willing to take more risks and he's willing to outwork Canelo, that becomes a very interesting fight. As for Dimitri Bivol, as I said in the build-up to their first fight, he's all wrong for Canelo Alvarez stylistically. If they fight again, I expect the same result as the first time around, to be honest with you. I felt that Bivol could not lose the fight if they were both at their best, and nothing has changed in my mind since then to change my position on that. Let me know what you think, ladies and gents, about that fight and how it went. Moving on from that, let's talk about Jai Opetaia and Jordan Thompson. Opetaia's got a little bit of a mix of Bivol and Alexander Usyk in the way he moves. Last night was more Alexander Usyk than Bivol. He came out and he had this little sort of bouncing step with that lead right hand, and he's rotating it and he's threatening to come with it, and then he'll shoot that backhand. But when he throws that backhand, something that Tony Bellew picked up on, so really good commentary. Well done, Tony. A lot of, obviously I'm not being patronising Tony Bellew as a former world champion, right? But a lot of the times, you don't see some good technical insight from a lot of former professional fighters. Tony Bellew delivered. Because one of the things he likes to do is as he shoots that backhand, he will shift. And he'll change the angle and then follow up with a secondary backhand, which has now become a lead hand. And he'll either do it with a jab or a hook. And he was able to surprise Jordan Thompson. And Thompson was massive compared to him. A lot bigger, a lot taller, longer reach. But he just didn't have the reaction times. And those constant little micro movements and then you're not sure when he's going to commit meant that it was constantly forcing Thompson to try and reset and time him on his way in. And he couldn't. And once he's beyond that lead hand and he's got that side on angle and he's up close, he's just levels above Jordan Thompson. And even when he had areas where Thompson's trying to hide behind that shoulder, you'd see him, he was in a position where he'd get that shift and then he'd literally curl over that hook to come over the shoulder and land on the face of Jordan Thompson. It was just very, very good stuff. We know that he's a wonderful mover, but he's really showing his repertoire now. And to me, he's looking like the best cruiserweight in the world. Let me know if you disagree. Are there any other cruiserweights out there that you think could take him? There was talk of Chris Billam-Smith fighting him. We know he's a rugged guy. We know he's got a good inside game. But this is a boxer puncher that can move, can bang, can be creative, can switch. He just looks like he's got so much in his arsenal. When Tyson Fury was talking about fighting all these different potential guys, Dempsey McKean and all of that, and everybody was getting really frustrated. We want to see the Usyk fight. And remember that back in the summer? When there was talk of Jai Opetaia, I was telling everybody, guys, that's a great fight. And people were saying to me, Chris, what are you talking about? He's just a southpaw. Dude, he can fight. Trust me, he's a problem. Well, it's now emerged that Jai Opetaia might be called as a sparring partner for Tyson Fury in preparation for Alexander Usyk. You cannot get better preparation than that. He can emulate a lot of the stuff Usyk does. It's the perfect sparring partner for Tyson Fury for that fight. Jai Opetaia is a real problem, man. Moving on from that, let's talk about Otto Wallin and Murat Gassiev. A lot of people have made out that this fight was really wide, and I don't understand how these scorecards were close. Wallin won it easy. Wallin got a split decision victory. Two of the judges had it to Wallin, 115-113 and 117-110 to Murat Gassiev. And people were in uproar. How can that be the case? This was a hometown decision. First and foremost, Murat Gassiev is Russian. He's of Armenian origin, and the fight was in Turkey. Now, for those of you that know your geopolitics out there, Armenia and Turkey are not on the best of terms. And Armenia and Azerbaijan, who are very closely related with Turkey, are having a really tough time at the moment, politically speaking. So you're not going to call that a hometown card. The reason that you were able potentially to get scorecards that are all over the place is because Otto Wallin was not landing much. And Murat Gassiev was probably landing even less. Because what happened was Wallin was deciding, I'm going to keep my distance here and I'm going to pour with the jab. Now, when Hughie Fury fought Joseph Parker, remember I used to talk to Peter Fury quite a lot. And remember this, those of you that always call me biased and stuff like that, Peter Fury and the Fury family were furious that Joseph Parker got that result. And I was one of the few Brits that came out and said, Parker won that fight. Because the pouring jab of Hughie Fury, much like the pouring jab of Otto Wallin, was often touching the guard of Gassiev and not going through. We're not talking about solid shots that are being caught and he's knocking his head back. Often he's literally touching his glove and then try and throw in a harder jab that will catch the hands and nothing's really happening. Meanwhile, Gassiev's just plodding forward. And so he's so inactive. I understand why people are giving that to Wallin. But then he'd sporadically land a powerful body shot. And so you end up seeing a situation whereby Otto Wallin's thrown 10 jabs. Most of them, 7 of them are pouring. They're not effective punches. 3 of them might have partially got through. Gassiev then lands 2 solid body shots. Who do you give that to? You can't really say he's being outlanded because they're not real punches from Wallin. Now, he did hurt him in the middle round. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying Wallin didn't land anything throughout the course of the fight. But in many of the rounds, for much of his activity, there wasn't much going on. But what he was able to do is completely control distance. And what you often saw, even with the hook, by the way, they were talking about, I saw people talking about a wide lead hook. Most of the time, he was cupping him and pushing him. It was about controlling his head because he had these feet that were coming close to each other, Gassiev, and then when he's got to launch from there and throw that straight shot, just by pushing him and stepping around him, he'd go forward like a ball, and then he's got to turn and follow the matador. It was just really poor stuff from Murat Gassiev, and as I said in the build-up, I'm a fan, but he looked like a shadow of himself. Now, why did he look like a shadow of himself? For a start, the punching technique that I was raving about beforehand and the aggression and the torque, the speed, the velocity he generates, that wasn't there. He wasn't punching with that same ferocity and velocity. Now, a thudding puncher, a heavy-handed guy like George Foreman, can punch late into his life, right? Because it's about mass, it's about weight. Snapping punchers, they need that explosive attribute to be there. If that's not there, they lose a large part of their arsenal. And he seemed to lack that. Is it because of lack of activity? He's fought something like 8 rounds in 5 years. And he's not fought at any great level since fighting Alexander Usyk. This certainly was not the Gassiev that fought Usyk or Lebedev. But in addition to that, he's also got this patching thing going on with his beard, whereby he's got some stubble and then complete baldness in a couple of areas. And that can sometimes be a sign of an autoimmune disease. Now, it doesn't necessarily mean it's a serious autoimmune disease, but when you're talking about the highest echelons of athletic pursuit, there's a possibility that his body is going through some stuff. There's some inflammation going on, and that can prevent you being the best you can be, athletically speaking. Maybe that's what's going on. But personally, I suspect it's a combination of lack of activity, and I can't really say age, as he's 29 years old. He's not old, but fighters age at different rates, and maybe he's not taking his career as seriously, because even against Balogun in the last fight, and I mentioned this in the preview, his feet look slower now, even before the Wallin fight, than they did when he fought Lebedev. He doesn't look like the guy he used to look like. And so from his perspective, you're struggling to close the range, and there's not much head movement either. You're literally just walking in behind a high guard. But what is then baffling is that when he was getting in and sporadically landing, and at no points did he land and really get through and follow through the target with a big hook for us to see whether he could really take him out of one shot. But he was hurting him, particularly to the body. He was landing some shots on Wallin, and you saw Wallin taking steps back, stopping throwing punches. A couple of times it came too close to the end of the round. But when they would often happen, sometimes he's also just landing 1s and 2s and admiring his work. Or landing 1 or 2 and then putting your high guard up and walking out, taking steps back out. And he's almost getting caught on his exit as well. And you're sitting there thinking, bro, it's a nightmare for you to work your way in because you're plodding. And then when you get in, you're giving up the spacing again, and you're deciding to go back on the outside. What on earth is wrong with you? It was just a baffling performance. In terms of where they go from here, I'd like to see Murat Gassiev link up with somebody like Robert Garcia to work on entry points, or potentially to link up with somebody like Eddie Reynoso too. Because if you're going to be that guy who perhaps has some stamina issues, but you've got individual power shots, you need to work on how you're going to sort out that feet and that balance in order to set up individual power shots. And I wonder if he could reach out to Eddie Reynoso. I think he could do some good work there with Canelo Alvarez. In terms of Otto Wallin, I wasn't impressed, but really good distance with the distance stuff, and he's a tricky customer, there's no doubt about it. He's very durable. He's now shown that against Gassiev and Tyson Fury, and because he's a southpaw, he's going to cause guys some problems. I do not think he's an elite level heavyweight. I don't expect him to become a heavyweight champion, but it was an IBF eliminator, so hopefully now he gets a good ranking, which is what he deserves, because you're talking about 2 B status guys that took some risks, and I've been very critical of B status guys that don't, so well done to these 2 dudes. But I'm not sure we're going to see Otto Wallin conquer some of the top dogs in the heavyweight division. I think there are better fighters there than him. But let me know what you think, ladies and gents. Please don't forget to hit a stiff jab on the like button, a right cross on the subscribe button, and an uppercut on the notifications button. Thanks for watching. Chat to you soon. Take care. God bless.